Hey friends, welcome to the In Focus podcast, a show for photographers who are looking to grow and scale a photography business that feels good. I'm your host, Gina, a wedding and elopement photographer, industry educator, coach, and most importantly, your friend. On this show, we'll dive into actionable strategies, industry trends, and all things photography related so you can leave each episode feeling inspired and in focus. Hey guys, welcome back. I'm so excited for today's episode. We have Alexis Sanabria. She is from Washington Wedding Day, Oregon Wedding Day, and California Wedding Days magazine. She's a publisher and works for Diamond Media. So it's going to be really interesting and exciting for us as photographers to kind of hear from somebody that's on that side of the media. So we are always trying to get our work published and seen and in front of more eyes. So who better to hear it from than somebody who's like actually on that side of the magazine, reviewing our work, putting together the spreads. She's going to let us know what they're looking for in terms of submissions, common errors, trends that she sees coming up in the industry. It's going to be so good. So I cannot wait to get her on here. Let's dive in. Welcome. I would love to kick this off by having you introduce yourself to us and maybe talk about how you got started in the wedding industry, what led you to become a publisher for Washington Wedding Day or Wedding Day all over, I guess. So just kind of maybe like a little background.
Sure. I'm Alexis Sanabria. I'm the publisher of Washington Wedding Day, Oregon Wedding Day, and California Wedding Day. And I work for Iron Diamond Media. We produce 7 wedding publications across the country, so various states, 3 in the Midwest and 4 in the West, including Arizona. So we're a pretty small team. There's 17 of us that work across all 7 publications, and it makes for a lot of fun and interesting stories to be around people that are in this industry in different regions of the country. So that's always fun for our team. And I have been in wedding publishing since 2012 or 11. Gosh, I can't remember now. And I got my start actually because I was working at a trade show with a previous employer. So my background, like through college, I worked for Wells Fargo.
Oh, yeah.
And I was a bank manager. I worked for Wells Fargo for 7 years before I totally switched gears. And I met the publisher of a regional magazine in San Diego at a trade show, and we hit it off. And I was planning my wedding at that time, and we just kind of stayed in touch. And then about, I don't know, 5-6 years after that first meeting, I moved to a different area in Southern California, about an hour outside of San Diego. And she was looking to grow her market there. And at that time, I hadn't been working. I was, a stay-at-home mom. I had 3 toddlers, and she heard that I moved up here, and she reached out to me and was like, I want to grow this market for my magazine. Are you interested? And we got together and we talked, and that was my entry into wedding publishing. So yeah, I went to school for communications, went to work for Wells Fargo. It was a great place for me to work during school, and then made this relationship, at a trade show. So I've been in it ever since. This is actually my third, well, my third, fourth, and fifth publication I've worked on. So I worked with her for 5 years, and then I worked on another regional publication in San Diego. And then they folded that wedding magazine during COVID. Really sad to see it go. It was a really beautiful magazine as well. I had a great team I worked with on that one. And then I knew the former publisher of California Wedding Day, by proxy. We had never met each other, but, we had mutual clients who would, talk us up to each other, oh, I wish you knew Alexis, or I wish you knew Thea. Her name was Thea, oh, I wish you guys did this like they do, or I wish you did this like they do. And in the middle of COVID, Thea reached out to me, and they were looking for a new publisher to join California. And that was my first Iron Diamond, at that time, Tiger Oak magazine. And then over the course of, the next year and a half, there were a lot of changes in the Pacific Northwest team, and they asked me to jump in. And I actually was really excited about working in a new market. I'd been in California for so long, so it felt good to sort of get a fresh start. And as you guys know, the relationship building is so important in this industry. So it was really fun for me to find new friends and, get to know a new community of people. And I love it. I love the Pacific Northwest. So it's been great for me. And I'm excited to talk with you today about what, the other side of publishing looks like, or sort of the insides of it. So I fire away.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Well, so that's kinda crazy. So, in, like, a brief synopsis, I guess, what is, like, a day in the life of, like, what do you do? What do you do every but just, like, I feel like I wouldn't really know what a publisher I know you
Yeah.
publish magazines. Like, day to
So
day, yeah.
the process starts out sort of, I mean, a lot of what I do is client meetings.
Oh,
And then the other side of it is like team meetings. So editorial planning. We call it pagination. So determining how many pages we're going to have in a magazine, and then working through those layouts and like how we're going to fit the advertisers into the layouts. So like the ads into the layouts.
mhm.
So there's a lot of work with our production side, and then a lot of work with our editorial side. And then obviously like a lot of work with our clients. So making sure that they know what we're working on and what's like coming down the pipeline, scheduling wise, or opportunities for them to be in the magazine or contribute to the magazine.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Okay, amazing. I feel like people are gonna see your name on here or, like, who you are, and their first question is gonna be, like, "Oh, I wanna listen because I wanna get featured, I wanna get published." So I guess let's just dive into the big topic first
Yeah.
on getting published. And so for photographers listening, what makes a submission, like, stand out to an editor or a publisher? And maybe start there in some of the most common mistakes that you see.
Sure. So for us, it's all about the details. And so I think, you know, obviously working with a couple who cares about the details is like number one, because if you have a couple, it's sort of an afterthought or not a big part of their plan, then there's not going to be a lot for you to photograph.
Yeah.
So I think, those more personal details, paper ends up being like a huge part of that. Like, for lack of a better term, whatever their wedding branding is,
Yeah.
we use branding a lot in our work, like our work on this side. But if your couple is like has a brand for their wedding, that is definitely a good indication that it will be something that publishers and editors want to feature in the magazine. If there's a high level of thought into that part of it. I think the most common mistake that we see when we get submissions is like people don't go into a day like that necessarily thinking about a shot list for publication, and you definitely want to do that. And then submitting too many photos. So we love to see the whole wedding. It's fun, but also we get hundreds of submissions. So like if the best photos are buried in 2,000 images,
Yeah,
that's hard.
they could get mad.
So yes. So I think that that's like two big things. Like if you have a great wedding you're working on, go into the day with a shot list for yourself. Like, okay, what do I know that they want to see in the layouts? And then making sure that you pare down your gallery to an appropriate number of images so that we can actually see that.
Yeah. Do you guys care on in terms of, like, mostly portrait or mostly, like, landscape style? Because I feel like at one point I was told, like, mostly portrait for social media, but, like, I feel like it's changed.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it depends. I guess if you want to be featured in print, we need both.
Yeah.
If it's just for the blog, really like whatever you want is fine. We can play with the formats in digital. It's totally different. And then, yeah, for social media, I mean, portrait is better. But
Mhm.
for us, for print, it really varies. And, if we get a great shot and we can use it as a 2-page spread, I mean, we love those moments in our magazine. We're not afraid to, you know, take up a lot of space with a great picture. So, for print, we definitely want to see both. There is not a preference.
Yeah.
If you feel like you have an image that you want to see, like potentially for cover, then obviously you want to leave that needs to be portrait and you want to leave room for masthead.
Mhm.
That's something that people don't often think about when we're looking at cover options. There has to be room for a masthead. And we do always have options, like, when we're reviewing covers for, like, real weddings, and so that's always something that's really fun for our team, but if it's not the right format, then it does get really hard, so that actually is another thing that, another mistake that we see is made. People will send us when they're sending us galleries, they send us password protected
Oh, yeah.
galleries, and that's not the jam. Like,
That's not fun. That's like you wanna probably, as a photographer, make it as easy as
easy as
possible
possible.
for you
Yeah,
guys to see it. So, I like and I mean, I'm on the photographer end of it, and I just know when I submit them, like, I try to follow your guys' instructions that are on
yeah.
the page, like, to a T. Like, if it says 15 to 20 images, like, keep it in that range or whatever. I know you guys have guidelines for how to submit them too. I feel like they have changed at some point. Like, at one point, it was, like, a transfer link or something, I think, or some people used, like, Too Bright Lights at one point, I don't know. But I forget what your guys' is right now, but
We prefer Dropbox
Dropbox,
link
yeah.
or WeTransfer, but I mean, we still will look at it if you send us something else. It just takes a little bit more time for us, and so, from a ease perspective, that's not always the best way, and I think, we see also a lot of, like, submissions with, like, getting ready photos, and they're adorable, and there's always, like, some really great shots in there, but it's not really part of the wedding story, so we're not likely to share those. So, like, if you're looking at paring down your gallery, like, don't use those
Yeah,
in the submission because we just won't use them, unfortunately. It could be something that, like, we could end up using on the blog if that's something more. That's another actually great tip. If you have something, you're submitting it, and you really are interested in, like, more immediate gratification because of our cycle, like how we plan and how long it takes for print to come out, like, put in the subject line for online publication if
okay.
you're looking for more immediate satisfaction. Or
Yeah.
if you just know, like, oh, this isn't necessarily like something I want to see in print, but like I want to submit it for my client, they want to see it,
Yeah,
then that's a great option. If you tell us like up front, then we know, like, oh, okay, this is not something that we need to look at, over the next 4 months, which is kind of our window when we get submissions. We're like, okay, is this something we're going to consider for print? Is this something they want us to consider for print? It's better if you give us all the information like upfront.
yeah. So that's, like, a really good question too, is how far out are you guys planning? So, like, what are we right now, we're in May. So,
Or in May.
spring, where are we planning right now?
Yeah.
What is life like? Yes. Excuse me.
So right now we just like are putting the final touches on Washington.
Okay,
Uh, so like any submission received after April 15th.
okay, coming
So
up.
like a month before we close is
Yeah,
when we like is our cutoff time. Like it basically gets bumped to the next issue.
okay. But that's, like, a pretty
That
the next issue is probably, different content though, right? Like, like, you guys are working seasonally, like
We're not, yeah, so we're not even, like, thinking about that one yet, but, like,
okay,
if you just we just basically, like, have I don't wanna call it, like, a dead window, but it's just, like, we have to cut it off at some point so we can, like, fact check and choose the photos and, like, get release from the photographer and the couple and, like, all those things, and so, like, we cut and I have a calendar here, but I won't pull it up right now, but for this issue, I think it was April 15th was our deadline, and that's basically a month before we close the issue because, like, we're gonna proof it in, like, another 2 weeks. So, like, the art team is working on all the layouts. We all have to fact check and, edit check and make sure, like, all the credits are there, and then we go to print. So,
yeah.
like, we check it twice before we ship it off, and then it takes another month from, like, the day we send it to the printer until we receive it.
That's so
So,
crazy.
it's a long process. Like,
Yeah.
print is a longer process, and so, basically, if you submitted after April 15th, then we won't even look at that until we'll start working on the next issue, which is, like, gonna be September, October time.
Okay, okay. So this is good to know too. My thought
Yeah.
there was, okay, I remember when I was first getting started, I sometimes would do like style shoots that were like a little bit more like seasonally like specific. So like let's just throw out for example like Valentine's themed-ish. So you would want to plan that way in advance, unless it was, I guess, for digital, then it could go sooner?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things where you could say like, "Oh, I'm hoping that you guys might feature this on the blog in February,"
Got it.
or
Yeah.
whatever, right?
Yeah.
And those more sort of seasonal things like that typically do end up on the blog just
Mhm.
because the magazine is on newsstands for 6 months,
Yeah.
and we are also, like, a season ahead, like fashion. So, like, right now, the issue that's gonna come out in July is our fall/winter issue.
Okay. Yeah.
So it
You're living in the future, actually.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So, yeah, if there's more seasonal stuff like that, typically will end up on
As
the
well.
blog just because
Yeah. Makes sense.
it's not really evergreen, you know?
Yeah, totally. So you obviously have like your pulse on the industry, what trends you're going to see emerging as the year goes on, both in terms of like style and like vendor experience. So what would you say that you see as like a major trend that's coming up this upcoming season, like wedding season, and like for the Pacific Northwest, that's like June through October ish. What do you expect to see more of? What are you guys looking forward to this year?
You know, so you said, like, specific to the Pacific Northwest, which I found interesting because I actually was just having a conversation with a planner about this because we were talking about, like, a feature that we had in one of the magazines, and, like, it was a trend, and we did the story across all the brands, like,
Okay.
across all 7 magazines because a trend in the wedding world is a trend everywhere,
Mhm.
right? It just depends on, like, how each market interprets that trend.
Yeah.
Or, maybe, you know, I would say the West is always a little bit, ahead of, like, the Midwest maybe, and so they might be, like, a little bit slower to that trend than some of the West Coast places, but generally speaking, a wedding trend is a trend, right? Like,
Yeah.
across the board. So I wouldn't say that there are trends specific to the Pacific Northwest, but I do feel like in the conversations that I've been having with other vendors and wedding professionals, I do feel like we're going to see like sort of another shift to more intimate weddings this next like 12 to 18 months. And we've actually had a lot of like how do I want to phrase this? Like, requests for, like, "Oh, can I want my wedding to be featured, but, like, don't use my last name." Like, a little bit
Oh.
more, like, private. Like, they still want the couple still wanna see their weddings in print, but they also don't want, like, random people Googling them after.
Yeah, okay, I can see that. Is
Yeah,
that
so we've
does
had
that
that
create a
where
problem for you guys, or do you just kinda roll
no,
with
we don't
yeah.
mind. Either way, no, we don't have a problem with that at all. Like, we're happy to include the first and last names if that's, what they want. But when couples are like, "Oh, yeah, but I'd rather my last name not be, like, out in the world," we're like, "Oh, yeah, no problem." Then it's just, Mike and Julie
Yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever.
totally. So more
That's no problem
intimate
for us.
kind of events.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if that's a trend, it's just I think that we're gonna see that sort of move again. I think, the last 2 years have been sort of like this, like, we got out of the box and, like, everyone was kind of a little bit wild and things were crazy in the industry, I think, overall, and I think now it's just gonna be, like, a little I don't even wanna say a step back, but I would say, on the 100 or less.
Yeah.
Which I think also lends itself to, like, better details and, like,
Good.
better experiences, which have been obviously, I don't again, I hate to use the word trend, but have been, like, so important over the last, like, 5 years, like, really couples leaning into, like, what is the experience of my guests going to be?
Yeah.
And I think, that's something that's gonna continue, but just sort of more on that intimate side.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I hope that trends that way. I would love that. And it's like, I do remember, like, right after kind of 2020, I feel like that kinda happened, right? Because it had to.
Yeah.
There was a lot more
It had
small
to, yeah.
had to happen, a lot of small and people kinda saw, like, the beauty and the magic in it. But, yeah, then there was, like, this big explosion of just, like, these grand huge everybody come, you're all you bring your aunt. And then, yeah, maybe people are seeing the going back to the other side and just kind of enjoying it. I do
Yes.
think then, especially, like, maybe with I don't know, I don't even wanna get into, like, the economy really, but, like, costs are just more expensive in general, so, like, bringing the size down a little bit still allows you to have, like, maybe that grand feeling wedding on a smaller scale, so I love that too.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that it's gonna be sort of a happy medium
Yeah.
between, like, nobody wants to go back to, 2021,
Yeah.
but I think finding that there's gonna be, like, more of a balance between, like, what we saw over the last, like, 2 years and, like, what was going on then, so that's something, that I think is on the horizon, and I think, going back to even like that, like, what do you wanna see when you look for features? Like, having those experiences, like, built into your wedding for your guests are also, like, great moments for us to highlight and, like, things that we like to see because, it isn't of course, your wedding day is about the couple, but it's also about all the people that come together to celebrate that couple together, and so seeing those moments is also really fun
Yeah.
to have in the magazine, and it also serves as good inspiration and, you know, the the point of print, right, is to get couples who are planning going, "Oh, I didn't think about doing something like that," right? Showing them something that they either haven't seen before or seeing it executed on a higher level.
Mhm. To inspire them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally. I guess last question then in terms of just, like, content being featured, do you have any advice for photographers looking to create more work that feels editorial? And I use that word loosely because I don't exactly know what you guys look for in terms of, like, the style of photos. I feel like in the photographer world, there's, like, this push in the luxury market right now that's really, like, a lot lighter, but I don't know if as a magazine, do you guys still feature all kinds, or do you try to stick to one style? Yeah, if you wanna speak into the word editorial maybe, and then that style
Yeah.
that you, like, associate with it.
We feature all kinds of photography. I'm sure you look at our magazine and I don't think it feels like one thing. But for us, definitely when we're looking at what to print, like true to color is the easiest,
Uh-huh.
right? We have had instances where, we're delivered images for a real wedding or, a styled shoot and it the four color print on paper doesn't translate as well.
Yeah,
Um, as it might, you know, on a screen.
yeah,
So, again, print is a different animal than online. And so for us, we do feature everything, but I think it like seeing true to color is always like, okay, this we know what we're
yeah,
getting ourselves into
yeah,
is good. And I think, from an editorial standpoint, I mean, I think allowing for negative space is always like good for us. I mean, we want to be able to, like, have places in the magazine where your eye can, like, rest and, like, take in what you're seeing. So I think that that's something that we're always looking at when we're, looking at layouts and how to incorporate the photos into the magazine and how to tell those stories. Gosh, let me think.
I mean, that's a great just reminder too. As photographers, I think it's in that like level of artistry comes from like slowing down a little bit on a wedding day
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
being intentional about what you're like shooting and why you're shooting and how you're shooting it. So, I mean, it's just a good reminder there as well.
Yeah. Okay, good. I think that's all I could really say. I mean, like I said, we feature every kind of photography, so we're not, you know, we don't exclude anyone, but it definitely makes it there is an aspect that makes it easier, right, from a print perspective. But we still want to highlight, all types of photography styles. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think we worked on a story with you like, I don't know, like 4 issues ago or God,
Yeah.
maybe it was my first one
Yeah.
where we talked about, like, the difference between print and digital. Maybe it was my second issue. Did you participate in that story?
I'm like I can't remember what our
You
story
did
was.
a shoot with us, I
I
know
did.
that, but I can't remember. Yeah, we did a story where we talked about, the difference between print and digital,
Mhm.
which, not couples are not always going into it thinking about, right? So, like,
Yeah.
that's another side of, the purpose of the magazine is to be somewhat educational as
Mhm.
well to couples. And so, yeah, we did a whole story where we talked to, photographers who shoot digital and photographers who shoot film and some who do both. And, that was a really like fun dive for us. And,
Yeah.
that story obviously had all the photography styles in it because it was about, like, these are the different styles of photography out
Yeah.
there. So, yeah, it's fun to tell those stories, and it's hard sometimes, I think, we all look at and I say we all, and I assume you read our magazine, of
Yes,
course.
yes.
We all look at it and we're like, "Oh, I've seen this before," or, "Oh, I read this, before. I've seen this story," or something along those lines.
Mhm.
But for couples, they're not planning their wedding for, like, well, most are not for, like, 4 years straight, they're
Yes.
and they're not doing it multiple times in most cases. So for them, it's their first time, right? Like, their first jump into that puddle, and so it's fun for us to try and find ways to get information to them and curate a magazine that's inspiring and educational and all the things that, the industry wants it to be also.
Yeah, yeah. I always think it's really interesting when I have a couple, and I usually ask this somewhere in the planning process really early on. Like, I try to gauge their interest in, like, if it's important to them to get their wedding featured or published or whatever, because there is, like, a little bit of education that goes into that. Like, they don't know, like, that details are so important, or, so it's, like,
Yeah.
making sure they know that so then they can, like, plan it into their day. So then I can capture it, and then it has a better chance of getting to
Yeah.
right in the magazine. So I just think that's, like, it's good that educational pieces for couples, because yeah, they don't know. They're not in it as deep as we all
No.
are.
Yeah. Yeah, and on that note, I wod say, like, if they're I know mostly photographers are listening to this, and maybe even for some of the, like, you know, less seasoned photographers out there, a good tip for you guys, I think, like, on the details piece is, like, to have the couple send you, like, their suite or their branded materials, like, before or after if you wanna take it home, or so that you have time to actually, like, create your own flat lay to photograph it, and it doesn't have to be part of the busyness of the day or, like, take away from other moments. I have a number of planners that we work with that, like, create a box for the photographer, and so, like, if that isn't something that you've experienced, maybe ask a planner you're working with, like, "Hey, can you, like, get me all these details together?" Because they want them
Yeah.
highlighted just as much as you do, and they're so important. I mean, I think that's one of, like, if we get a wedding submission and it doesn't have those details in it, it's almost always gonna end up on the blog.
Yeah, yeah, and, like, that's so, so good to know. I love that, that's a great tip. One time I did have a stationary, like, invitation designer. She reached out to me ahead of the wedding and, like, mailed me, like, a full suite with, like, 2 sets of it so I could, like, layer I was like, "That was so smart, thank you."
Smart, because
And
she wanted it.
yeah, I
Yeah.
took photos, like, I shot the crap out of it because I, like, knew how important it was to her, so it totally, like, not that any stationary designers, I mean, I doubt are listening, but it's great idea.
It's a great tip, like,
Yeah.
I don't often get to be, like, at wedding day with, like,
Yeah.
my vendor friends, but it's happened on occasion, and when you can see them, like, taking that time to make sure that they're, like, taking care of those moments that, like, couples may not even be thinking that they care about at that point. It is really, like, it's those sort of, like, unseen moments that
Yeah.
vendors, photographers, planners put into the day that, like, really do make the difference when it's over, right? Because the couples are, like, in their own space,
Totally.
going through their own motions, and at the end of it, they're I think they feel so differently how they saw it through, for lack of a better word, through your lens, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
how did you see the day can feel very different for them.
Yeah. That, like, I was, like, shooting houses for a little bit for a vlog, and I went in and photographed this house, and the owner was like, after she saw the photo, she's like, "It was really incredible to see how you saw my house," And she's like, "It made
Yeah.
me, like, re-fall in love with it," and I think about that with weddings a lot too. It's just,
Yeah.
like, that different point of view and, like, how you tell their story almost,
Yeah,
really just brings it all together, like, with a bow on it, so
and
totally.
that's actually what I always say, like, with our magazine, like, we're like, you guys tell the couple story, but we're telling the story of your work, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
this is and that's how I always feel about it. Like, this is our moment to make sure, like, you guys see, like, we see all the work you guys do, and
Yeah.
we love it. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that, I love that. Okay, wait, let's shift to print and media, like, visibility, because being in a publication, it's not just about being featured, it's also about the relationship, like, with that editing platform.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about role of advertising today. How can photographers leverage that relationship and the credibility that comes with it, like, when working with publications?
Well, support your publications. Be open to, like, collaborating, right? And make it easy for us to feature you.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, you know, we are fighting a battle all the time in print of, like, "Oh, I just wanna do digital," or, "Oh, I just," and it is a totally different beast, and I think, you kinda nailed it on the head, like, with the credibility piece. I could go on I the name I will not speak, but we all know the major wedding platform right now and say, I have a Sony camera in my office and put up a storefront and say, "I'm a wedding photographer."
yeah, totally.
Uh,
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that, but I could. And so there is a credibility piece that comes with being in print, and it also helps build your brand in the community as well, like, who people who are caring about being featured are also seeing you in there. But we don't exist without advertisers, and we will always feature people who are not advertisers, of course. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
you've been featured many times. And so we always, we try to find that balance. But, what I talked earlier about, like, page count and things like that. If we are coming down to our deadline and we have to cut pages, we're not gonna cut something that is with somebody that we're working with, right? We have to find another place to cut. And we don't ever wanna cut anything. When we are at that point in the process, we love
Mhm.
everything that we've already chosen. So that doesn't make us happy either. But yeah, I mean, support the publications, whether it be
Yeah.
us or, your favorite blog. Like, we don't exist. There's a lot of work and behind the scenes stuff that goes on, like, with all those teams, with our team, with all the teams that come together to make it happen. And we know that you guys love to be featured, right? Like, and that couples love to be featured. So find a way to support, your favorite magazines or blogs so that they can keep being around to
Yeah,
support the industry.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that, and then make it easy, right? Like, we talked about some of those, like, things that make it hard for us to feature work earlier, make it easy for us to feature you, be open to collaborations or yeah. I mean, I think those are, like, the main things.
yeah,
We wanna work with people who are excited about working with us,
yeah.
and, I think that's how the wedding industry is as a whole, like, if you arrive on wedding day and you can tell someone's not feeling it, it's not fun, right?
The vibes off. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so we want to have fun. Like, what we do is fun. We love what you guys do. And so, like, just keep it good energy and yeah. I mean, support those publications, whether they're digital or print that you love so that they don't go away.
Yeah. I think you guys make it easy in a way too, because even if you're not quite there in your photography business to advertise via print, there's a lot of other ways that you guys host events or just like launch
Yeah.
parties. You guys sell tickets and like showing up and being a part of those events is a
Yeah.
really easy way to support
Yeah.
them and be part of the community and make that connection. So I
Yeah.
know when I mentor photographers, I'm always like, well, like there's an event happening next month here, like go check it out so it's,
Yeah.
you guys make it really easy. I feel like I think I've said this to you maybe before, or maybe it was someone else in the business, but, like, I love that your publication feels easy to connect with. Like, it's not like this completely faceless, like, there's real
Yeah.
humans behind it. We
We're
actually
real team.
yeah,
Yeah, and we try to be really present. It's not easy too. I mean, none of us, we all have to travel. I mean, like, you guys have to go to places too, but we love being present and being in the room with everybody, and I think our team really prides itself on taking feedback too from people within the industry, and so that's something that's really important to us too. If you see that, we could do better at something, and, by we, I don't just mean like our publication, but I think in general, like, tell us, because we want to be better, and I'm speaking for like the media at large, the wedding media at large, but I think we want to be like the best for your business that we can be. And if like you don't tell us like, hey, I wish you could do something like this, then we don't know, like,
Mm.
oh, we're missing a piece of the puzzle,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so for us, now I'm speaking just about our team. We love feedback. We love hearing like how we can make it better, easier, and we're always trying to be our best to
Yeah.
support your guys' businesses.
Yeah, I love that, and I think there's multiple instances, like, over the past years that I've seen your guys' business do that, like, take feedback or ideas and, like, really level up what you guys do, so that
Thank you.
incredible. I want to end with one more little question, and I usually like to leave the listeners with, like, something super actionable that they can, like, take and run with. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna end it with, for someone that's listening and they have never been published or featured, what's, like, one thing they could focus on or go do, like, soon to get closer to that? I don't wanna promise them to get
Yeah.
published, but, like, to actually have an opportunity to get featured or published in a magazine.
I think you mentioned earlier, like, you try and follow the submissions process, like, you read it, you try to follow it, and I think just educating yourself on that part of it will help you a lot, and then, every publication is different, so, being attuned to, like, where you wanna be featured and making sure that you're, like, listening or reading what their requirements are, I think that education piece, and then I think, like, for a younger, newer business photographer, I would say, create a shot list for yourself,
Yeah.
because I think that if you have that either, like, in hand or committed to memory, then it's gonna make you more successful as you go forward and try to create a gallery that you want to be featured. And then I would say to, connect with the publication that you wanna be featured in. I hope it's us, but whichever. And then, I think a lot of, and this is not new, but, the networking piece of it is so important. So go to a networking event
Yeah.
where in your community, wherever that may be, and like, don't be afraid. Almost like, you know, 30-40% of the people in the room don't necessarily know somebody else. So like,
Yeah.
just be brave.
Yeah, I think our industry is very we're people, like, we're in
Yes.
weddings, so it's I think it's, like, it's really scary to go, but then as soon as you get there, there's, like, always someone that's, like, ready to step up and talk or meet
Yeah.
you or
To
interview.
welcome you.
Yeah, exactly, so I
Yes.
think I've definitely, like, had that nervousness headed to events, like, especially if I'm going by myself and then you get there and you're like, "Wow," or you, like, run into somebody that you didn't
Yes.
realize was gonna be there, or it's always a good time, so,
Yeah.
absolutely, and just building that network is so, so huge for
Yeah.
businesses.
So do a little education on submissions, and I would go to a networking event.
Yes, yeah. I love what you said about educations too. I was gonna add, like, go read their magazine, like, see what kinds of
Yeah.
photos and, like, read their blog posts and their look at their social media and see, like, what types of photos they are looking or using, and then go recreate it in your own way. So I think that's a great other level of education as well.
Yeah.
Okay, I usually
Alright.
end with, like, 3 random questions. I didn't
Okay.
I didn't give you these ahead of time. These are just for fun. So I will ask these 3. The first one, I'm switching it up a little bit on you compared to past episodes, but the first one's gonna be, if you had to be one vendor on a wedding day, because 'cause you're not one, so, like, technically this is fun to ask, what would you be?
So, side note, during COVID, I was ordained and I participated in, like, I don't know, half a dozen weddings with, like, my local crew of wedding professionals, and I actually loved it.
I love this so much.
So I would do that. You it's a light load, I would say, to what the rest of the, vendor partners do on the day of, but you get to know the couples really well, which is really fun. So I would be the officiant for sure, 100%.
You would be an amazing officiant. If you ever wanna dive back into that, I know we would. There's a million couples out there. We got you.
Yeah,
It's not
I
my free
really
time.
loved it actually. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, second question is if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Oh gosh.
My son is, like, into superheroes, so I know all of the powers if you need ideas.
My kids ask me this all the time, so you're not the first
I
person
thought
to.
you would choose something like super speed reading or something, like, I don't.
I think I would wanna be invisible, like, I would wanna have the power of invisibility because I am just so curious, like, how about things that, like, maybe people don't wanna say to you, like,
Right.
I would love to be the fly on the wall, so I would say invisibility, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I love that one. That would be a good one. And last one is what word are you living by right now?
Joy. Joy. Yes. That was actually my word of intention for this year. I, like, in my personal life, have had a lot of, like, loss in my family the last 5 years,
Mhm.
and it was really hard for me, like, to I don't even wanna say let it go because you can't let it go, but I wanted to, like, start the year and really focus on joy because there's a lot of good things in my life with my family and my work, and so I'm like, "Okay, joy is my word for this year," and it has been going really well for me, and I feel it because, like, like, with intention, I'm looking for it in
Yeah.
the day, and so that's been really helpful for me this year.
That is such a good reminder for so many people. I'm, like, a firm believer too, and, like, you have to, like, seek out, like, happiness and joy and, like, light in the world, and then it
Yeah.
present itself to you, and that's a great one. I'm obsessed with that one. That's good. Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for jumping on here with me today. This
Yeah.
was
Thank you
super
for inviting me.
gonna be super helpful for the listeners. I know everyone's gonna be really, really excited when they, like, hear about this. So thank you.
I hope
I
so.
Oh, yeah.
And let me know what your feedback is.
Always, always. I will link to obviously just all of the wedding date links below that we decide to include. So you guys can check those out in the show notes. But otherwise, just a big thank you for being here, Alexis.
No, thank you for having me.
Okay, that was so amazing. I am so like grateful that we got to have Alexis on this podcast and just kind of share that insight in the backside of the publishing world that most of us don't have any idea on like what goes on over there. We're just submitting our work and fingers crossed. But now we have so much tangible advice and her experience to like lean on and use as we move forward, try to submit our work to get featured and published and shown to more eyes around the world. So I think some of the biggest takeaways from today are just really curating your galleries when you do your submissions and following those submission guidelines to a T. I think also just being really active in the community, supporting your publications any way that you can, and just staying on the in and like what's going on in the industry and trends in the industry in that regard as well. I love that she said they really do want to showcase all kinds of photographers. And then when it does come to what types of images, making sure that you have those detail shots. I think she mentioned that a couple times in the episode. So that comes down to a lot of education with our couples leading into their wedding days, working with the planners and all of the vendors just to bring together this complete picture that's going to be really inspiring for future brides who are planning their wedding and looking at these publications and looking for that inspiration. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Share it on Instagram, tag me, tag Alexis, tag Wedding Day Magazine. And then if you took anything away, I'd love to hear what it is. If you have a minute to leave a review wherever you stream your episodes from, I so appreciate it. It really helps this podcast. And until next time, stay focused and keep smiling.